This is WizKid with this one titled Daddy-O. Before that, Arya Star coming through with All the Love, keeping us in the west of Africa this evening, 11 after 11 p.m. Central African time. And no, that is not angel numbers. I know people have a fixation on that 11:11. I've seen too many posts. If we're looking at the clock, it's saying 23:11. Nevertheless, let me keep it stepping. Let me keep it moving. We're talking about maximizing on social media. And one way to do so is engaging the potential for marketing on social media. Now, small businesses are rewriting the rules of marketing. Social media isn't just an add-on anymore. It's a new marketplace, a powerful stage where brands can punch above their weight, connect directly with customers, and scale globally. Now, tonight we are joined by Kenneth Mokgabudi, who's an award-winning marketing strategist and senior digital manager at Instinctive Partners Africa, with his finger firmly on the digital path, or rather pulse as well. Kenneth helps brands navigate the complex world of transformation and engagement. So as a small business, and as we see small businesses migrate from traditional forms of marketing and advertising to this digital space, what does it really mean for growth, competitiveness, and the future of African entrepreneurship? Let's dive in. We firstly welcome Kenneth. Kenneth, thank you so much for joining us. Welcome to African Diaries.
Hi, Sheila. Thank you very much for having me tonight. I'm glad to be joining for the rest of the team, and I'd like to greet everyone also listening in. Thank you for having me again.
Kenneth, to kick us off, can you paint a picture of today's social media marketing ecosystem? Who are the key players and what are the different roles that they serve?
That is a very great question, Shayla, and I believe it's a great starting point for everyone listening in on the show. So the first one is, how does the ecosystem look within the social media space at the current moment? What we do know is that Meta is currently dominating the space. They currently have a combined user base of over 2 billion users worldwide, and that is across obviously the Meta platforms. Those platforms include WhatsApp, Instagram, and Facebook itself. So across those three platforms, there are over 3 billion, or almost half of the people on the planet that are currently on those channels. We've currently seen, obviously, the adoption or the brand shift of Twitter to X with the purchase of Elon Musk. Of the platform itself. And we've seen that gradual shift of brands moving off that platform, but more users increasing their voice or communication or interaction on that platform as well. Then there are new players within the game that have recently come in. And when I mean recently, it's within the last 5 years. It's platforms like TikTok that have become rising platforms for users everywhere, including Africa, and especially for young people, which is millennials and Gen Z, which have adopted it with TikTok coming from China. So we can see there's a multitude of platforms within this ecosystem that exist, and they're all battling for our attention. They're all battling for our time. And obviously, what we benefit from being on all these platforms is interaction, and engagement with our fellow humans.
Kenneth, what's interesting is that you spoke about the battle for attention. I think that is a completely different subject matter altogether that requires another sit down, right?
Great.
Just as a society. I want to stick to this idea of key players. Now, I know that X has a total of less than 16 African countries integrated into their offering. How does this then play out for the African market when it comes to these key players?
So that's honestly what we battle with every single day, and this is what we advise our clients on, and what we work on within our space or projects that we currently exist in. So SMEs currently have a difficult task on their hands. Is that these platforms have mainly been Western leaning, and by Western leaning I mean their monetization, their algorithms have been mostly focused on the countries of origin. Those countries of their origin are obviously the US and mainly Western Europe, but we've seen obviously with the rise of TikTok that leaning towards a more centralized space. So, what can businesses do in terms of utilizing these platforms and integrate within them? The first question that every entrepreneur, any business or SME needs to make and understand is, where is their target audience? Where are the people that they want to connect and engage with? Those people may not necessarily be on X, they may be on Facebook, they may be on WhatsApp, they may be on WeChat, they may be on Instagram, or they may be on any channel that specifically speaks to their demographic. So then once you understand that, what a business then has to do is that, how does it get on that platform? How then does it create a communication plan that allows them to interact authentically with their target audience on that platform? So X, even with this limitation on the African continent, is still a great platform to be used organically as a channel to just have a two-way communication with your audience, because we've steadily seen the limitation in terms of its integration within the African continent has been slow, and that has mainly been Elon Musk and the leadership team that has now purchased the platform, pulling back towards the African continent. But what we have seen is the conversation on X still remains viable. It still remains authentic, as well as many young people still exist on the platform, still tweet, still engage, and still interact with the rest of us on it. So I wouldn't necessarily advise our brands or SMEs to deviate from the platform. Each brand is unique. Each SME has its unique challenges and its unique targets. What each channel needs to understand when dealing with a specific platform is, my audience there? Can I interact with them organically or authentically on that platform itself? How can I do it within their language, and in order to generate the results that I am currently looking for? And that is the best way to always interact with this platform. You have to make them work for you, as they are built for you to be able to engage with your user base on the platform.
The voice of Kenneth Mokgabudi, who is an award winning marketer, strategist, and senior digital manager at Instinctive Partners Africa, joining us to talk about the realities of social media marketing becoming a new viable way for small businesses. Kenneth, I want to talk about knowing where and how to utilize these platforms, right? So it's one thing for Shayla to own, perhaps, let's say, Shayla owns a jewelry store, and Shayla wants to promote these jewels that she owns and she sells. And so she heads over to X. I feel like, because of the kind of offering I have, I don't know if X would be the platform to leverage from. And we're also of the mind that because we have audio-visual offerings such as TikTok and Instagram, that those best sell any visible product. Is that a truth that we can live by? What are some of the trends, the stats, and the truths behind maximizing on these platforms?
That is another brilliant question, Shayla, and thank you very much for asking it. I think that is every challenge that or question that every small business continues to have. Is that, hi, I'm Shayla. I have my jewelry store. My jewelry store, I sell jewelry to the female audience within a certain demographic. My female audience is located within this region, and my audience interacts with this kind of content or information. So what we do, Sheila, and what I usually advise our clients on is, first understand your audience. And like you indicated, it's not just looking at the data, it's not just looking at the metrics, it's understanding them as human beings. So when we look at who buys jewelry as a human being, we have to understand it's someone who may be, whether it's within Kigali or whether it's within Johannesburg or whether it's in Cairo. So I have to understand, what is their demographics. That demographic can be, what is their age, what is their race, what is their sex, and what is their gender as well. Then when I look at those factors, then I create what's called a buyer persona or consumer persona. That persona gives me an idea of who that person is. Then when I look at that consumer, I then have to understand, what are their pain points, what are the questions that they have, and how can I provide their answers. What are the issues that they're currently confronted with for their business, and how can we solve that? So then those is what we call psychographics. So you combine the use of behavioral demographics and those psychographics to basically create your buyer persona. Once we have your buyer persona, Shayla, is then we understand, Shayla, your target audience is within Kigali. They are this age, they are within this region, and they enjoy this or interact with this type of content. We then advise you, or what we then advise is that once you understand that information, you then can then create your marketing or communications plan. Your marketing or communications plan then speaks directly to that audience in terms of all that information you've been able to gather and collect. So, with all that information, you may find out your audience is actually not on X, your audience is actually on Instagram. Therefore, we shouldn't dedicate our resources and our time to X, we should dedicate it to Instagram because that's where our target audience actually is. Then, with our target audience, when we get onto that platform, it's not just mass communicating to them, just picking up our own brand, our own platform, and our own jewelry store. What we then have to do is understand when that audience wants to make a purchase of jewelry, let's say a watch or earrings or a necklace, what are they looking for? What language speaks to them? What inspires them to make a buying decision? And that's the ultimate key point. What value proposition can we give to our audience to want to make that purchase? And that is the consistent advice and strategic direction that we continuously give to our clients. Is don't start by selecting a platform. Start by selecting your user. Start by looking at who your audience is. What problems do they have? How can you solve them? And where are they? Once you are able to understand those questions, then we can then say, TikTok may be your best platform. Facebook may be your best platform. Instagram may be your best platform. And then once we get onto those platforms, we can then create your unique voice or your unique language that speaks to that target audience and creates your brand in front of them. So therefore, it's authentic, that connection. That connection actually brings value not only to your business, but also to your customer as well.
Kenneth, here's my thing. They are individuals, and I suppose it's going big or going home. There are
Correct.
individuals who believe that their target audience is across the globe. My
Yes.
offering is a digital one, and so my target audience is anybody who feasts their eyes on my post. How do you navigate that kind of thinking? And I'm saying this because you said something so important. You have to solve a problem, right? So you
Correct.
have to be conscious of where the problem is. And if we're saying it's a global issue, then the language changes, right? Because a
Correct.
29-year-old in Kigali does not necessarily respond to life in the same fashion a 29-year-old in Kiev would. And so, how do we mitigate that?
That is a very, very great question, and I appreciate that. So that is the predicament most, especially entrepreneurs or SMEs have at the beginning when they're interacting or when they're creating their brand. The problem is when you're speaking to everyone, you're actually speaking to no one. Because, like you indicated, a 29-year-old in Kigali doesn't have the same problems as a 29-year-old in Kiev or in Johannesburg, or even a 20-year-old in Johannesburg doesn't have the same problems as a 20-year-old in Pretoria. So when you're doing that, you have to understand there's a limitation when it comes to speaking to everyone, and that's the limitation where we've currently seen digital overtake traditional forms of media. Traditional forms of media, as they have existed in the past, were mainly set to speak to everyone. So a TV ad went out to everyone. A radio ad went out to everyone. A billboard goes out to everyone. But what happens when that's the case? When person X sees the billboard and it doesn't necessarily speak to them, they ignore it. And that's wasted attention. That's wasted eyeballs. That's now a wasted marketing spend. Because if you're marketing to 2 billion users, you're not marketing to anyone. But what digital gives you the benefit of, it gives you the benefit of refined targeting. You can be very specific for who you want to speak to the very microscopic level. By microscopic level, I mean within their psychographics, what content they consume, the region they exist in. You can look at what pain points they have and how then you're able to solve them. And that's why I've loved being in the space. And that's why I'll continuously advise our clients and every new entrepreneur or small business to invest heavily into digital because it gives you that opportunity to refine your targeting to the very minute detail. So, if to answer your question, if your target audience is within Kigali, Kigali is a very big region. Who is your target audience within Kigali? How fine do you want to get them? Because at the end of the day, The consumer who's going to make the decision is the one you speak to directly. You're not going to be able to speak to a million users as an SME. What you're going to be able to do is be able to convert or engage with that one person, and that one person will be two people. Those two people will be three people. So it's better to start small and grow big instead of trying to go big and then try to refine from there. So what I always advise, and I will obviously I speak to it very detailed when interacting with our clients or even potential clients. Be very specific with who you want to engage or interact with. You do not want to waste any marketing spend. You do not want to waste any budget interacting with everyone. Let's rather provide a solution to one person. That person will grow, and you have to trust your value proposition, or you have to trust your brand to grow within the community it's supposed to grow in.
I suppose, Kenneth, an extension of that would then be that you're solving problems specific to specific regions. So back to the jewelry example. Shayla has a jewelry store and she wants to cater for individuals in Johannesburg because that's where she's based, right? And so if I want to then extend my offering to Kenya, the solution has to be tailor made to Kenya. That's when we talk things like shipping and. So is that the approach that we are taking?
Exactly. So we've seen this across many brands and even the biggest brands in the world, whether it be a Nike, whether it be an Apple, or whether it be any other brand that we can speak of. What we've seen that they've currently done is that they do not employ the same marketing strategy that has worked for them in the US. They do not apply it directly into Rwanda or Kenya or Ghana. What they do with each specific region, they have to localize it. Each specific region that we're currently speaking to, especially when it comes to digital marketing, is we have our local nuances, we have our local heritage, we have our local cultures, we have our local languages that we speak. And a brand has to be able to speak to that locality that we want to engage with. If a brand comes to me in Johannesburg and speaks my language, I'm able to then communicate better with that brand. But if it comes and speaks to me in a different language without understanding my culture, without understanding my language nuances, or without understanding my people, I am hardly going to interact with that brand. So if we're going back to Shayla's jewelry, if Shayla's jewelry has succeeded, and I don't doubt it succeeds in Johannesburg and has done well in South Africa, when we move its brand strategy towards Kenya, we are completely changing it towards a Kenyan audience. A Kenyan audience is not a South African audience. The problems that existed, the socioeconomic problems that exist in Kenya are not the same in South Africa. The joys that people have in Kenya, whether it be the reason they make decisions, the reasons why they go to the shop, the reason why they how they interact online, is not going to be the same as a South African audience. The language they speak online, how the use of emojis that they use, the use of imagery that they use, the use of how they communicate with their friends is not going to be the same for a Kenyan audience as it's not going to be the same for a Rwandan audience. So with each specific, if we're having a continental approach now to our strategy, we have to decide within our Shayla's jewelry, what are our geographic targets in terms of regions and countries? What are the local nuances within them? What are the cultural aspects that we have to take into consideration? And what is the community like in those specific regions? And we have to tailor our strategy towards each specific region. The issue that I've had with global brands of the past, and that change we have seen it currently start to be implemented, is Africa as a continent has been thought of as a monolith. So global brands have seen Africa as one thing, but Africa is not one thing. Africa is 53 countries, and those 53 countries have their very refined nuances internally as well. South Africa has 11 languages. So we're going from a global brand going to target 53 countries down to 53 countries, it goes down to 11 languages within South Africa. And that is the same context for every single African region. So Africa is not a monolith, and brands need to move away from that. So for Shayla's jewelry will need to understand that our target audience or what has worked in this region is not going to specifically work in that region. And that is the only way brands can become successful, especially entrepreneurs and SMEs. It's not going to be a blanket strategy that we approach. It has to be specifically tailored to each country and people.
Kenneth, let's talk about eyeballs, right? The it, let's just talk about the social media landscape. It is full of videos, right? And when we hop onto social media, the first thing that we're looking for isn't an ad. We're not looking
Correct.
to be sold to, and that's the era we find ourselves in. Hence, influencers thriving because they're telling real stories. Well, we assume that they're telling something to the effect of a real story. And so, with that being said, how much more difficult has it become for those who are familiar with traditional spaces of marketing to integrate this new platform into their offering? And I'm saying this because if I see an ad on a particular social media platform, I skip through it so quickly. I don't even give it the light of day. Okay. But when an individual is just telling me about their day and how stressed they are, I will watch that for 2 minutes straight and not flinch. And so, how do we conscientize small businesses to be able to cater for that reality?
Brilliant, brilliant, brilliant observation. And you're very right. Since the dawn of the internet in the 90s and the integration of social media in the early 2000s with MySpace, Facebook, along those lines, the initial success of all those platforms, including Google itself, has been advertising. Advertising has been the primary revenue driver for all of those platforms. It's the reason why they're trillion-dollar companies right now. But they're also seeing the same issue that you've correctly identified and the issue that everyone has seen along the lines. People are no longer looking at ads. People are skipping past them. They're installing ad blockers on their platforms and they're ignoring the ads in totality. So, therefore, what we've seen is conversion rates for ads currently go down, and people are no longer clicking on them, people are no longer engaging with them, and people are no longer converting on them. So if I'm an SME or if I'm an entrepreneur getting into the marketing space or the social media or the digital marketing space, what benefit or how can I utilize an issue that currently exists to my benefit? The best way, and this is what I'll continuously stress, is storytelling. You identified it. What's the term? You hit the nail on the head in terms of if you see someone speaking about their story, their problem, and conversing with you organically and authentically, you're much more likely to engage with them. What is that called now? That's not advertising, that's called storytelling. And storytelling is the new investment that entrepreneurs and SMEs can start to invest in. And we've seen that shift across the social media space. So storytelling is not about saying about your brand or about your business. I sell this. This is why you should buy from me. No, that doesn't work anymore. That's advertising. People don't want to know that because there's a million businesses that do the same thing. Why customers or people want to invest in your business or purchase from your business is the story that you have to tell. Why did Shayla start her jewelry store? What problems is she trying to solve? Where do the products come from? How did she source them? What value is it? What's the story behind this brand? That's what we want to invest in. And we want to make sure that we can connect with that story. And that's where that behavioral science comes in. We like people that like us. We like people that we can connect with, that we can emotionally connect with. And it's the same thing for brands. People want to emotionally invest in a brand. And the best way they can emotionally invest in a brand is by that brand telling its story. I'm Shayla. I started my brand when I was 13 years old. I started selling jewelry at my school. And since then, my business started to get investment from various sectors, and I've grown it to be a 1 million rand industry, $1 million industry. I source my products from this store, and this store feeds this many people. People like that story. So, what you can see, I've differentiated very vividly. There's advertising where I am shouting at you, I'm forcing you to make an action. Then the storytelling, where I'm engaging with you, I'm connecting with you. And when I am able to do that as a brand, I get then that emotional resonance that makes people come towards me instead of me pushing towards them. And that's where brand storytelling starts to play a huge factor in the success of companies. And that's where if I'm a young SME, if I'm a young entrepreneur, that's where I'll be investing my marketing spend, being able to tell my company story, being able to tell my brand story.
Kenneth, here's another thing, right? Is that we've told very many stories. We've seen very many people pose as small businesses. I mean, you scroll past a platform such as TikTok, and everyone is selling travel, right? Uh, and then you find out that the destination isn't the real thing. You've already paid, and there's scamming that takes place, right? So
Correct.
people are now a bit skeptical on whether or not I should trust this individual that just looks like me but is selling me something. I don't know if I can trust you. And so, how do we build a relationship of trust and credibility with people understanding that what you are selling is genuine, is true?
Correct. The unfortunate part about these platforms, and it's an unfortunate aspect of the reality that we currently live in, people do take advantage, and people have taken advantage of these platforms. People will continue to take advantage of human trust, and humans are very trusting individuals. How people can then start to, as a brand, I'll speak from a brand perspective and I'll speak from a consumer perspective. As a brand, the best way to establish brand trust is transparency and communication. You have to be able to provide transparency towards your target audience. That transparency is knowing who are the people behind the brand, who are the names behind it. Put faces behind it. So yes, Shayla's jewelry, we have. I'll go back to my example of Shayla's jewelry. Yes, we have it, but who is Shayla? Who are the people that work with Shayla? And once we're able to provide that, and once we can put a face to behind the brand, we then create that emotional connection. We then create that brand trust that exists. If we're able to communicate that transparently towards our target audience, we can then establish to say we're not a scam. We're not defrauding people. We're actually legitimate, we are real, and we are authentic. And the only way we establish that is by properly telling our story, being very transparent, and communicating effectively. Therefore, on the other hand, if I am a consumer, my mitigating factors, or when I look at a brand I can trust and a brand I cannot trust, I'm looking at how they are communicating with me, how transparent they are. And consumers, what the benefit that they have these days is the internet is written in ink. Therefore, what we post will always be there. So, and what everyone else posts can always be found. We have this plethora of information. We have this plethora of content that is currently out there. And if there is a brand that has defrauded people, or if there's a brand that has scammed people, there will usually be telltale signs that indicate that. There'll be usually crumbs that lead towards the scam. So, what I mean by those crumbs is we have to be able to look at comments. People that have previously interacted with this brand, and what are they commenting, or basically what are they saying. We have to be able to see any reviews that the brand might have. Are people leaving positive or negative reviews about this brand or this company or this business? Are the comments indicating a good experience that people had with this brand, or bad experience that people had with this brand? If the brand currently exists, are there any other aspects where I can go through word of mouth to see how this brand has communicated? I can go through reviews, I can go through comments, I can go through their website, their social media pages. I can do my research before inputting any information or engaging with the brand on any level. So that way, that allows the consumer to take that responsibility on their self, and also the brand to be able to communicate effectively. But the great thing that we've seen across our regions and across our countries is our government and policymakers are starting to step in quite effectively, even though it may be slow in terms of stamping that out. So, if we do have cases of scamming, if we do have cases of people being defrauded, the best way is to report that, and obviously hand it over to the relevant authorities within your region. Those relevant authorities will then they now have policies or laws that can then start to mitigate those kind of problems. And the best one is also indicating it or communicating it to the platform itself. Meta, Instagram, TikTok, WhatsApp do have channels and platforms where people can communicate scams, where people can communicate that they've been defrauded, and those pages or those businesses can be delisted. So it's a community-based effort where every single one of us, if we have a bad interaction with a brand, if we have an issue where we've been scammed or defrauded, we have to communicate that online. We have to go through the relevant channels, whether that be our local authorities or whether that be the platforms itself, so no one else falls victim to that scam as well. And from a brand, it is just communication and transparency. That is the best way to establish brand trust.
Just a few comments coming in this evening. Khosi saying very insightful conversation. I know that MJ Visachi was sharing the same sentiment and just echoing that it's all about brand loyalty. I know that Jason the Voice is also appreciating the conversation that we're currently having, as well as Manlit and all this happening on TikTok. The voice of Kenneth Mokgabudi joining us, an award winning marketing strategist and senior digital manager at Instinctive Partners Africa. And we're talking all things social media marketing. We're seeing this great migration from terrestrial, traditional forms of marketing all the way through down to this digital space. I want to talk about the future, Kenneth, right? And I'll tell you why I want to talk about the future. So I noticed something. There is a particular e-hailing service that I use, and I've noticed that over the course of this past 3 weeks, they have changed the navigating route to suit what I usually tell the Uber, oh, rather, the e hailing service provider where to go to, right? So there's a particular route that I instruct them to use, and I've noticed that the platform has now adopted it such that even the drop off point is different. So that for me is incredible because I know that that's AI's work, right? And I keep on thinking to myself in the spaces where we are saying that go read up on commentary, and I don't mean to jinx things, but people can use AI to forge commentary, right?
Correct.
Or people can use it for good and ensure that your particular algorithms are fed to your particular audience because you've stated this on your social media platform. And so it's always continuously searching for the patterns that you've said or sort of coded into your platform. Where do you see the future of social media marketing in the next 5 years?
That's a very difficult question. It's one I wrestle with every second of my day. And it's one that will keep the good marketers ahead, and will the bad ones will start to fall with it, through the cracks. So I'll start with the first point that you've made. What the benefit that social media platforms have had for many people and the value proposition that they've given to us is that been able to create our digital identity. That digital identity is how we've interacted, engaged, and used these platforms. What I mean by that is, as you correctly identified with the e-hailing service, every single thing we do on these platforms, whether it's an e-hailing app or whether it's a social media app or whether it's a website, is being tracked, whether we like it or not. The reason why it's being tracked is not because it's invasive, and that's me being optimistic. The reason why it's being tracked is to provide a better user experience for the person using the platform. So if I am using an e-hailing service or Shayla is using an e-hailing service, it can then see, hey, Shayla actually prefers this route and prefers this drop-off zone. So instead of us trying to create a new route every single time, let's go according to the patterns or the interaction that Shayla is or the data Shayla is leaving behind on this platform. So we make the platform usage more seamless and we make it more user friendly so that there are less friction points that you're currently engaging with on the specific platform. That before was done not through a very manual effort, but through very specific algorithms that these platforms have created. But then I'll go to your second point that you identified. We are seeing a growth, an expedited growth, an exponential growth of AI. And AI is now taking over, and AI is able to do this much faster than humans, much better than humans as well. And obviously, that's now allowed these platforms to now fast track that seamless integration of providing a great user experience for us, whether it's the content that we see on these platforms, whether it be the connections it makes for us or recommends for us, whether it be the brands it puts forward to us. So, where do I see the future going? I see, and the best way to predict the future, I believe, is to look at the past. What we've seen, social media platform started as a huge funnel that allowed everyone to come in. I believe, is going to be the next 5 years is more localized pockets of social media. What I mean by that is people will exist within their unique bubbles or people will exist within their unique niches. The reason for that is that if you're engaging on Instagram, you're then engaging with content around fashion, jewelry. Let's say you have a puppy or a dog, your puppy or dog. What that do is then refine your user journey to put you within the same bubble or within the same echo chamber as people that engage with the same content so you guys can make more connections. And that's where I see these platforms going, creating those bubbles or those pockets or echo chambers where it will no longer be that I can engage or interact with someone outside of that. It'll be that I exist within this echo chamber. And that's what we've seen in the West with the US election. That's what we've seen in our local countries as well with our elections, where we've seen a huge promulgation of fake media that exists because these echo chambers are starting to exist, and these echo chambers are not communicating with each other anymore. And that's where we then start to see that polarization start to come into place. That's where we start to see that shift towards what's the word I'm looking for? Um, Race-based or character-based politics, because people exist within their echo chambers now. They're no longer interacting outside of them. So in the next 3 to 5 years, I see that coming about a lot more. I see a lot of more growth of bots on these platforms, as I believe more people will start to offload on platforms. So people won't necessarily have 3 to 5 platforms like they did 10 years ago that they currently exist on, but we'll refine our usage down to one. And that one platform will be the one that we engage and interact with all our friends, or that one or two. So I see that localization or that echo chamber or bubble or pockets existing a lot more. And I see these platforms working more towards just giving you that tailored experience towards our individuality, which unfortunately will have the negative effect of cutting us off from community. But it's not all doom and gloom. I don't want to sound negative. What that just means is that you'll be able to connect with your crowd and your community a lot better and a lot more. That's the benefit of it. The negative side of it may be that you may start to then see and hear less people outside of your own echo chamber, which can then cause a polarized view of the world or one world view as aspect. And that's my concern that I've started to see that may happen within the next 3 to 5 years.
Mr. Mukhabudi, this has been an absolute pleasure. So insightful. I see that producer is saying class was in session. Indeed, I agree. Thank you for the knowledge you've just dropped.
No, thank you very much, Shayla, for having me, and always glad to join. Happy to provide some insight, and always looking forward to coming back if the opportunity arises.
The voice of award winning marketing strategist and the senior digital director at Instinctive Partners Africa, Kenneth Mokgabudi, joining us this evening. Listen, I feel like there's quite a bit that I need to go study. Specifically, go back and reflect on this conversation that has been. It is 12 minutes before the show comes to an end. A quick breather, then we touch base with Morris Touch.